Hey everyone and welcome to Storytime. My name is Jake and today we are going to be looking at the subreddit r/maliciouscompliance. So sit back, relax and enjoy some satisfying stories. Don't question the rules and do what you say? Okay, Karen. The nursing home I work in has gone through multiple members of management. Every time we get a new director of nursing, or a Don, we have a mandatory meeting where he or she will introduce themselves and the new rules they put into place. One of the ghosts of Don's past was one I'll call Karen. She had the haircut, the attitude, and the shrill voice. The first rule Karen set into place was that one CNA had to be on the hall at all times. Absolutely no exceptions. We were seriously understaffed, so it wasn't always possible to be on the hall. Being one of the certified nursing assistants who has to work the hall alone a lot because there are no people who will come in to help, I of course tried to explain what the flaw was in her rule. She did that "I'm the dominant one" head tilt and interrupted me to say, "You don't need to question my rules." The next rule Karen set was that there would be absolutely no cell phone usage in the facility. All cell phones had to be left in our vehicles or in a basket next to the time clock. No exceptions. This ticked off even the members of the administration. The scheduler will text people to ask if they will come into work. The nurses use cell phones to communicate with the director and DON when they aren't in the facility. People grumbled, but she yelled, "These are the rules. If you don't like it, you can find another job. CNAs are a dime a dozen." That is exactly what some of the CNAs did. We lost 4 more people right after that meeting, making us even more understaffed. This ticked me off because one of them was the best partner I ever had. So here comes my petty revenge / malicious compliance. The first day, I had to work alone after that meeting. I kept her words in my mind. One CNA on the hall at all times. No exceptions. One of our VIP residents hit the call light within 10 minutes of my shift, wanting some brownies from the kitchen. The kitchen is off the hall, so I go straight to Karen's office, which luckily was on my hall. "Karen, I'm the only aide here and Miss Carr wants some brownies from the kitchen." "Why are you telling me? Go get them for her." "You said there has to be one CNA on the hall at all times. I can't leave the hall to get them." "Then get another CNA to go get them for you." "You said we can't use cell phones, so I have no way to contact another aide." She gets up from her desk in a huff and gets the brownies. When she returns, she shoves the brownies in my hands and says, "Don't bother me for a petty mess again." Okay, even more compliance. Because she was so stubborn, this malicious compliance went on for a few hours, so I'll shorten it into a list. No residents were harmed during the malicious compliance. Keep in mind that this all happened within one shift. I work on a very demanding hall with nearly 40 people on it. Before you say that there shouldn't be one CNA to 40 people, trust me, I know. 3 residents wanted washcloths or towels, but I didn't have any, so I couldn't go get them one. 5 more residents wanted snacks from the kitchen, but I was the only CNA and couldn't get them any. 2 residents wanted showers, which I could have done, but I wasn't allowed to leave the hall to find an aide to watch mine while I did it. The trash stunk like holy heck, but I couldn't leave the hall to take it out, so it stunk up the hallway and Karen's office. I may have moved the trash bin closer to her door. I couldn't pass out ice water because I couldn't leave the hall to get the ice cart. Supper trays came out and I couldn't leave the hall to go get it. I'll never forget the look on Karen's face when I knocked on the door and told her that getting the residents fed shouldn't count as a petty mess. So I needed her to go get the trays. Luckily, Karen was staying late and this didn't last longer than this one day. The residents kept complaining and finally Miss Red, our nosiest resident who crashed the mandatory meeting, led a lot of the complaining residents to Karen's office. One of those residents was Miss Carr. She yelled at Karen so loud because she couldn't get her ice that people started peeking around the corner to see what was going on. Karen tried her hardest to defuse the situation and explain to Miss VIP why the rule was in place. Miss Carr was having none of it. Karen didn't know that Miss Carr used to be a nurse, and that was why the director of the facility made her a VIP. After her tongue lashing, Karen came up to me, seething with anger. Through her gritted teeth, she said, "You can leave the hall as long as it pertains to a patient care." She slammed her office door so hard that something inside of it fell. I heard her say, "Ah!" on the other side of the door after the crash. Karen didn't last much longer after this, because the facility had a lot of demanding residents and an even more demanding director. I don't know what was happening on the administration side, but I hear horror stories all the time about it. FYI, when it came down to the things the residents were requesting but I couldn't get, I was going to get them anyway once Karen left. Karen tended to stay until 8 PM sometimes, and the day I worked alone happened to be one of those days. When you think about like Karens in management at places of business like call centers or accounting firms, something like that, it's like, oh, that's kind of annoying because it's a pain to be around. But when they're in charge of someone else's care, that's like, no. You think it's more important to be right than do your job? Enjoy hanging yourself professionally. This happened over the course of the summer of this year. I work for a small warehouse distribution center that has a grand total of 10 employees. 2 of those 10 work in the warehouse, and I happen to be one of the 2. Over the course of the last few years, the company has been becoming increasingly more profitable because the volume of work has been steadily increasing, leading us to the need of hiring a 3rd full-time employee for the warehouse, bringing us to a grand total of 11. Our recruiting process is somewhat automated because we use an agency to send candidates our way rather than going through the whole ordeal of taking out an ad in a newspaper or posting a job offer online. The only parts that our company plays in all of this is picking up the phone to place a call with the agency and interviewing the candidates. It wasn't great at first because the candidates that got sent our way had major red flags. And that's when our idiot hire entered the fray. He was 17 at the time and a sabbatical from college because he didn't quite have a career choice made. He seemed decent enough to our manager and endeared himself with his story about having a rough childhood and wanting to save up money throughout the year in order to pay for his education. Given our lackluster candidates and our semi-urgent need for help, the manager decided to justify his pick with, well, he seems to have a good head on his shoulders, and a job like this will really give him a lot of help in life. Now, I have nothing wrong with being a good Samaritan and helping out whenever possible, but being told that we're hiring someone based on the idea that we're going to provide work ethics and life skills to a teenager, on top of teaching him how to perform manual labor? My colleague and I exchanged a look that didn't need any explanation. The following Monday, we met our new teammate, and just as expected, on the surface, he seemed perfectly normal. Solidly built kid with a lost yet enthusiastic look on his face because this was, well, his first real-time job in grown-up world. Just like most people, he wanted to make a good impression on the boss who hired him, prove to everyone that he belonged in the company, yada yada yada. On our end, we were just as happy to have an extra body on the floor, because at least that would be the start to our relief from our ever-mounting stack of work. We did take the time to make him feel welcomed and help accommodate him on the first day, while the boss wanted to give him a good training. So, as expected from a kid working next to the boss that hired him, he did his best to impress, and to his credit, he did well for the first 2 days. And that's where it pretty much took a nosedive. I'm all for the spirit of helping people improve themselves when they are actively showing efforts, but this kid was something else entirely. I could make a boomer-style rant about how worried I am for the planet given the prime example that this boy gave to us during his short tenure, but I've decided to spill my guts here. Otherwise, this post would have been long-winded and would have felt like more than a vent than a malicious compliance post. As I've said before, I'm all for self-improvement over time. I'm far from being an exemplary employee because I've had my share of issues to contend with over the years, and I'd like to think that I'm coming out on top. But this was something that belonged in the hands of a social worker. By the end of the first week, we took notice that the kid had anxiety issues, and felt a little out of place because he wasn't accustomed to doing physical labor for a whole workday, which is 8 hours. We did our part to get to know him a little better and reassure him that we were there for him to talk to, because we're pretty open to most subjects of discussion, and given he's the youngest person in the building, we'd have no trouble guiding him with work and some of the issues he had outside of work. After the first weekend, that's when things became weird and just downright unprofessional. It started small. He'd show up to work on time, only to jump onto the couch. We have a couch in our break room, with his outside shoes still on, and proceed to try and go back to sleep for whatever time he had before the start of every shift. I understand that we have lives outside of work, and that sometimes we can suffer from insomnia, but to see that at the start of every workday? For the record, we asked about it, and he simply stated that he has trouble waking up, despite sleeping over 8 hours a night, every night. Then there were the distractions from his constant texting, and his general lack of availability at and for work. How is this possible, you ask? Try spending the first hour of your shift locked in the bathroom every day, or planning things during the workdays that requires time off from work. Again, I've got no issues with planned appointments, because we all have lives outside of work. But with this kid, it felt like every other day there was a plan to get out of work and constantly miss shifts left and right. Throughout the first month, we did our best to talk to him into a mentoring fashion, to get his head in a better place professionally, and hoping that it would trickle down personally. Wrong. Oh, what a surprise we were in for after that point. I did voice my concern to the manager that hired him that we weren't against the idea of working with the kid because he did show some signs of improvement as far as the work went, but we were not inclined to raise a child for him. That's not what we were getting paid for. And even if we were to get paid extra for those services, it would never cover the deep-seated issues of this kid. As far as my manager was concerned, all he heard was, "I made the right call by hiring a 17-year-old because this will make a great PR pitch for our company, thus making me look awesome and benevolent." Now, after a month of getting to know someone, eventually you either start getting along or you don't. The mixed baggage we got from this kid made it so he got along with both of us in a friendly manner, but he took a better liking to my colleague and deemed me to be a lovable and intimidating hardbutt. Outside of his general avoidance from manual labor and general absenteeism while getting paid for it, for whatever little work he did, at least we could count on him to do the bare minimum. Now, given that I had been attributed many roles and identities by this kid, notably hardbutt, loser for willingly being single, a robot because I'd show up to work in order to work, heartless because I am a robot who's always at the gym in the evenings and working during the day, just to name a few, those really didn't deter me because they were just words from an ignorant kid who just wanted to oppose a perceived authority figure. I was actively contributing with my colleague in educating this kid about life, until the day he decided to make my bad list. Somewhere at the beginning of the second month, the idiot and I get into a verbal spat. He gets tasked with putting some items back on the shelf, and he's taking his sweet time by faking his ignorance about the assigned places or what the products were. I didn't expect him to have intimate encyclopedic knowledge about the products, but if after a month you can't be bothered to remember some of the best sellers that we carry, you're definitely not showing much promise anymore. Because of his time-wasting tactic, I snapped and called him out on his BS, and told him he was being inefficient. Apparently, that was the straw that broke the camel's back. Shortly after, I get called into the office and get reprimanded by the manager and get explicitly told not to tell the idiot anything anymore that could be misconstrued as me bossing him around. At the end of the workday, my colleague inquired about what happened and advised me to just keep my distance and just let the idiot hang himself. I did my part in trying to get him to be productive, but clearly the new guy was just in it for himself and would not amount to much of anything as far as this job was concerned. Later on in the evening, I had a chat with one of my friends about the happenings from that day. He also advised me to just let the kid be and to not bother telling him anything anymore. He's not my employee, and I was not personally responsible for him. Here's where the malicious compliance kicked in. There was no reason to tell this kid anything anymore, and so I stopped talking. I waved hello in the morning and goodbye in the afternoon. I dumped him on my colleague who played along and just let all of the red flags just reappear one by one. It took him a few days to catch on that I was giving him the silent treatment, but when he finally figured it out, a light bulb went off in his head. He was under the impression that his little complaint to the management shut me up completely, thus giving him carte blanche to do as he pleased without any consequences. He started off small with a few idiocies over here and purposeful mistakes over there, and while always eyeballing me. These were all things we had trained him for that he decided no longer applied to him. Since management told me to no longer tell him anything that could constitute as an order, I stayed quiet and slowly let him escalate. He wanted to disappear in the bathroom for 4 hours a day? Sure, go ahead. Waste packing materials for cool sound effects? Sure, why not? Scream obscenities at the top of your lungs? Of course. Make inappropriate jokes to people who clearly don't share your sense of humor? Absolutely. Constantly joke with the manager about not getting fired because he was convinced he was in good graces and had him in his back pocket? Boy oh boy. It would take less than 2 weeks before the manager that hired him to start paying attention for the first time as far as work output and performance were concerned. Indeed, he was shocked and disappointed. What really disappointed him was most of his general unprofessional behavior and incessantly childish antics. Gee, who would have thought a 17-year-old wouldn't have been a good fit for a serious full-time job? So, a few days before my planned week of vacation time, I get called into the office once again. This time, it's the manager telling me that he was less thrilled with the kid's performance at work, and that he was getting rid of him after my return from vacation. So, for the time remaining, I was told to not say anything, and to keep doing what I was doing, and to essentially just suck it up for a few more days with this unleashed buffoon. Needless to say that I walked out of that office with the biggest smug grin behind my best poker face. 1 week later, I found out that the kid had been let go a day and a half into my vacation time, because they were able to find and hire someone else to replace him. As the story goes, the kid walked into the front offices haphazardly to talk to the manager, and walked in on him giving an interview to the guy who would eventually replace him. Good riddance. Oh, imagine getting fired 1 week into your job. That's going to be a reality check right there. And he was also hired by an agency as well, so they're going to have to write "fired from last job" when they're trying to hire them. Oh. Hey everyone, I hope you all had a really good day and that you enjoyed that video. If you want to check out some other videos, then click on screen right now, or check out the playlist down below. If you enjoyed that video, then please do leave a like. And if you want to submit your own stories, then you can do so by joining the Discord in the top link in the description. But thank you so much for watching, and I will see you very soon.